Well, last week, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation disclosed that it plans to acquire a 20% minority equity stake in Dangote Refinery. The reason is that this move will further ensure an undisrupted supply of petroleum products across the country when the transaction pulls through. As expected, there's been a lot of questions asked and observations made since the information made it to the media. Mr. Bismarck, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, joins us now to answer some of these questions and share his thoughts on this intention. Good morning, Mr. Rouani. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the NNPC is following in the steps of successful national oil companies. Saudi Aramco has been buying up stakes in refineries outside its shores as part of its plan to boost refining capacity. And it's not just that. You also have other companies that have joined in. You have in Russia, Rosneft have also acquired into a private company. So why does it seem like this is attracting a lot of attention?
Well, anyway, typically when things, anything of this nature, this size and magnitude, will attract attention and controversy, and especially when it involves Africa's richest man and also the company with the highest stock market capitalization in Nigeria, setting up a refinery and petrochemical complex. So controversy is always follows successful projects. But now, before we even go into the controversy, we should ask ourselves and put some context to this conversation. One is that today, Nigeria is supposed to be actually importing 93 million liters of petrol every day, while in fact our actual consumption is anything between 60 million liters. In other words, 33% of what we are importing today is actually smuggled outside Nigeria. The loss is about almost $9 billion a year. So what is the value of this investment compared to the loss? It's a no-brainer. The total value, if assuming that $15 billion is the value of the investment, and you are taking 20%, that's $3 billion compared to the smuggling loss of $9 billion a year. So it pays for itself automatically from day one. Two, what is the Dangote refinery and what are the trends in global refining? Today, we have our own refinery in Port Harcourt, which was built in 1965, which has no output whatsoever, compared to a refinery built in Singapore in 1961, which actually processes 1.5 million barrels a day. So our four refineries with supposed capacity of 450,000 barrels a day are producing nothing, whilst in other parts of the world, refining has actually moved, and refining is a high volume, low margin investment. So by actually buying forward, which is a part of the public-private partnership initiative of the country, Nigeria is going to be guaranteed, one, guaranteed steady supply of petrol. Dangote will be guaranteed steady supply of crude oil, and there will be massive investment in infrastructure. Today, the world has moved more to hub refining. In other words, there are hubs in Rio de Janeiro, there are hubs in Houston, hubs in Rotterdam, hubs in Singapore, hubs in India, right? And Dangote's refinery, with its capacity of 650,000 barrels a day, would actually qualify as the seventh largest refinery in the world with cutting-edge technology. So why should Nigerian government not buy into this critical social infrastructure? So it guarantees people consistently you would have petrol, and not only petrol, you have diesel, kerosene, methane, and dual-purpose kerosene, and supplying the whole of West Africa. So this refinery has the capacity to meet all of the West African and possibly Central African needs. What does it do for Nigeria? Nigeria will earn foreign exchange. Nigeria's smuggling will be eliminated. Nigeria's, and of course, the infrastructure built to support this critical social infrastructure will also be supported. Okay.
All right, Mr. Rouani. So one of the first reactions is that how come the government, which has 4 moribund refineries, is attempting to get involved in another one?
Well, it's better to own 20% of a successful investment than to own 100% of a dinosaur. What you have today are dead refineries. No matter what you do, we are trying to use $1.5 billion to rehabilitate one and go through this whole maneuver of getting them alive. So there's a point where I believe Nigeria will cut its losses and run away. So it's better for Nigeria as a country and any investor for that matter to have 20% of a successful company. Bear in mind, what is the pedigree of the Dangote Group? Dangote's cement operation is running at 33%, growing at 33% revenue. Even Lafarge reported that kind of growth. So compared to an economy that is growing at 0.5%, the Dangote Group has actually outperformed the economy over 10 times and outperformed manufacturing about 33 times. So I think this settles it. This is a good thing to do as far as we're concerned.
All right, so perhaps the petroleum industry bill will tilt the conversation because by then NNPC will transition from a parastatal to a private company owned by Nigerians. So do you think perhaps the NNPC is looking ahead and that's why they are proposing this 20% stake?
Yes, you make a very important point. You see, if NNPC acquires 20% of the Dangote refinery and petrochemical complex, which by the way is cutting-edge technology, and NNPC is privatized or commercialized, its interest, government interest in the complex will drop from 20% to, let us say, for example, that NNPC sells down 40% of the public. So the stake of NNPC, the government stake in Dangote will be 60% of the 20%, which is actually only about 12%, and therefore it will not be, the refinery and petrochemical complex will not be bogged down by red tape and bureaucracy. So in fact, that makes a point. That's why private-public partnership is there, and that the Nigerian government and people will benefit from the success of the Dangote refinery, which is going to be, which is a cutting-edge technology, which is very efficient, and it's going to be producing at 45% less lower cost than most refineries in the world today.
All right, more and more, countries are talking about, moving to cleaner energy, with electric cars. Should the government be increasing its stakes in refineries at this time?
Well, you make a very critical strategic point here. The truth is that as we move into renewable energy, as we move into electric vehicles, the obsolescence of oil and the irrelevance of OPEC becomes there. But the reality is that we have to deal with this. Nigeria has gas, Nigeria has oil, and we have to, and we will continue to use electric cars, petrol-fired cars for a long time to come. So long term, yes, this investment will have lower returns, but in the short run, it deals with one, perpetual shortage of petrol, our import dependence on refining, and thirdly, subsidies, the subsidy issue, which actually eats into subsidy, actually about 25% of our total cost of running government in this country today. It denies state governments and the federal government of money needed for critical issues, and therefore you have to look at it short term. Subsidies are eliminated. Short term, smuggling stopped. Short term, the currency strengthens. Short term, we would earn money from servicing the whole of West Africa. And medium term, our infrastructure improves and we become competitive compared to the rest of West Africa, especially in the light of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So this is a win-win situation, both for Nigeria, for the Nigerian people, and for the private investor.
Okay, but in the long term, people are asking, not long ago, the government talked about $1.5 billion for rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery, and you have the other four. What's going to happen? Are they going to be left there to waste, or should there be a plan, to work with this, especially with this $1.5 billion that is just being used for rehabilitation?
I suspect that, you see, the government looks at it as a portfolio. You will have some bad components and then some good ones. So when you put everything together, Nigeria will be making the right decision to invest in a successful refinery. And I suspect that eventually they will have to dump what you can call the lemons and the dogs in the portfolio. And the Port Harcourt and the other existing refineries today are actually dead dogs.
All right, Mr. Rani, what's your outlook if eventually NNPC gets involved in this Dangote refinery?
What I think is going to happen is that, one, it's going to, the NNPC and the Nigerian government is going to spend significant amount of money on pipeline infrastructure, depots, and therefore you will not have tankers running all over the country, killing people on the roads and destroying the roads. You are going to have, like I said, you are going to have subsidy eliminated. You are going to have significant improvement and efficiencies. And then there will be pricing, equivalent and competitive pricing, so that you will have the same price of petrol across the whole of West Africa. At that time, the Nigerian economy is, at least will be growing at about 4, 5, 6, 7%. And therefore, we will not be victims of abject poverty, and we will be actually emphasizing those areas where we have comparative advantage, which includes petrol, cement, and other areas where Nigeria is very competitive compared to its African peers.
All right, Mr. Rani, let's look at the scenario, a non-oil world. What else can Nigeria fall back on?
Well, first and foremost, you rely on gas. Nigeria is more of a gas producer than oil. And what we are doing is actually using the oil now, when we can. Because in 10 years from today, you can imagine India, 2030, India says they will not be using petrol-fired cars anymore. India has the largest refinery in the world, which processes 1,250 million barrels of oil every day. And so will oil stop to be relevant? No, it will still be relevant, but it will be relatively less relevant than it is today. So it's not a threat to our existence, but it means it's a wake-up call that Nigeria has to wake up and make hay while the sun is shining. We cannot afford to wait anymore. If not, our fragile economy will slip into failure.
But as the world moves towards clean energy, does it look like we have a plan towards that area?
Well, if those who fail to plan to fail. So I'm not too sure that we have a plan, but whether we like it or not, we will have to live with that reality. Renewable energy is here, just like coal lost to oil, and oil is losing to renewable energy, but it is still important. Oil is used for heating, oil is used for power, oil is used for electricity, and oil is also used for firing vehicles and trains and all. So it will be a mixed bag. We are not going to see the end of oil, but definitely we are going to see cheaper oil, and we're going to see oil exporting countries having to deal with their new reality. We've been talking about it, it's all talk in Nigeria, but now it's time to act on it.
All right, Mr. Ruwani, we sure hope that it all turns out right for everyone, Dangote, the government, and of course, the people in Nigeria. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Bismarck Rani is the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company, and he shared with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So we'll take a break now. When we come back, other conversations continue on Business Morning.